Hey everybody, what's good, Classic City? Welcome to another episode of AthCast. I am your host, Matt Pulver, joined by Chris Dowd and Elle Lewis. Let's get this thing started. I am really excited for this episode to inaugurate our News and Politics Roundup episodes. Today is a panel discussion of what went down at City Hall last week, where a number of real consequential decisions were made. There were lawsuits threatened, tempers flared at times. A lot happened. It was quite a voting session for the mayor and commission.
Oh, Lord. They're going to get all of us fired.
I'm just saying,
Can we take a break?
So we will be discussing the brand new restrictions on Airbnbs that were approved last Tuesday, as well as a huge victory for Commissioner Tiffany Taylor in Inner East Athens. Then we'll look at the hubbub over raising wages and salaries for Clarke County employees. And for this episode, Athens politics nerds Chris Dowd and I are joined by Elle Lewis, a member of Athens Against Apartheid, who have joined other groups to fill City Hall the last few months to call for the mayor and commission to issue a ceasefire resolution for Israel's war on Gaza. Elle will update us on their efforts and explain why a local government should engage in international affairs like this. This is, of course, our first go-round with an episode of this sort, so expect us to get better, more informative, and more inclusive of the issues that you want to hear about. We want this to be an easy way to keep yourself up on what goes down in local politics and news around the Classic City and the decisions that are made that impact our lives here. All right, so without any further ado, let us get into the news of the week.
The ACC Commission passed strong regulation on short-term rentals like Airbnbs this week, as recommended by the ACC Planning Commission, but it may not last. The regulations prohibit new short-term rentals like Airbnbs and VRBOs in single-family neighborhoods unless the owner of the rental lives there most of the time. Existing short-term rentals that don't comply will be given 2 years before they would have to stop operating. And that seems totally fair to me, but David Ellison, a local lawyer representing a coalition of short-term rental owners, told the commission in no uncertain terms that his clients were going to sue. The 2-year sunset provision is especially vulnerable and would probably not survive a legal challenge. But Ellison condemned the whole ordinance with a litany of alleged violations. He said it may violate the zoning procedures law, that it may violate due process, equal protection, and even the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution. Yeah. So the commission passed the Airbnb regulations unanimously, but this isn't over. The ordinance is going back to committee, where they're probably going to water it down and then pass a weaker version, and they'll hope to do that to avoid being sued, but that sort of seems inevitable to me at this point.
So I'd like to try, if we can, I mean, there's not a lawyer here at the table, but try to, if we can, tease out what is subject to like a legitimate lawsuit. I guess the sunset clause, the sunset provision is the main thing. But then, of course, this Ellison fella was talking, about trying to attack the whole thing, kit and caboodle, which doesn't seem... that doesn't seem very likely because we can point to plenty of places that have restrictions on short-term rentals.
Well, in the Fifth Circuit, there was one lawsuit that overturned a similar law in New Orleans. I think there were some differences that may be important there. I haven't really looked into the details of it, but there is like a little bit of legal precedent for the Commerce Clause stuff. Yeah, which I kind of blew my mind. I thought that was just a wild argument that he was trying to make.
I don't want to say too much because, again, but also not a lawyer, but I feel as though I know New York banned them completely, New York City banned them completely. So given that cities have been able to outlaw Airbnbs, like just across the board, no longer allowing them, I would be really shocked and surprised if there's like some sort of special precedence where Athens has to allow them to continue to operate I mean, 2 years is wildly generous as it is.
It seems to me that if New York City couldn't find counsel, couldn't find lawyers that could strike down what's in place in New York City, it ain't going to happen. I mean, peace to this Ellison fella, but I just don't see it in him. If the whole of New York City couldn't figure out a way to strike one of these laws down. Now, the sunset provision to me is really interesting because do we understand that it was Sarah Gehring on the Planning Commission who sort of 11th hour said, oh, yeah, and let's put a sunset provision in,
That's
a 24-month?
right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad she did that. I think it greatly strengthened the ordinance.
Absolutely.
I think, lots of people were kind of criticizing it as not strong enough. And I can't imagine what they'd be saying if the sunset clause wasn't in there.
Now, one question I have, again, not a lawyer, but so the sunset provision basically just removes the legal non-conforming status of the properties, like the being grandfathered in-ness of the properties. And Mr. Ellison says that is legally vulnerable, but then there are also provisions in the ordinance that do stipulate how that legal non-conforming status can be nullified or removed. Like if you abandonment for 12 consecutive months, that would bring about a nullification of that legal non-conforming status. So it would be effectively sunsetting on a property that is abandoned for 12 months.
Yeah, that was the original idea, just to kind of very slowly phase them out. Mm-hmm. But then Sarah Gehring jumped up and was like, no, let's do it in 2 years. And that's all the time we're giving them.
Yeah. I mean, I think one workaround is perhaps, and I'm really just spitballing here, but if the sunset provision is struck down and yet properties can be sunsetted if the owner does something like abandons it for 12 months or sells the property, might we just create more and more burdensome sort of hurdles for the property owners to satisfy in order to maintain that legal non-conforming status? Because we already have conditions. That precedent is set by, at least it cannot be abandoned for 12 consecutive months. What if we said, well, it can't be abandoned for 1 month, or I don't know, name some other hoops that you have to jump through in order to maintain that status.
This is going back to the Government Operations Committee, so I think they're going to workshop this and try to make it as strong as possible. They're going to try to get the thing that's as strong as possible that will stand up to a legal challenge. So we'll see what they come up with.
I sort of just feel like it's kind of bluster. A lot of people that spoke in support of the Airbnb being allowed to operate, they also seem to have been astroturfed, because their arguments were as though they thought that their homes, which they live in and rent, were under this clause when they weren't. It was not their concern whatsoever. And so it sort of seems that they thought a big enough showing of support with this person with enough legalese could kind of push it through, because Georgia is pretty landlord friendly. Mm-hmm. And so I think Athens may even be one of the only cities that's considering this, even though Atlanta has a huge issue with this as well. So I think it was maybe just being like, hey, you've made a lot of landlords upset in a landlord friendly state. And I think he thought maybe that would be enough to either weaken it or maybe get that sunset provision taken out. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, what I would be very interested in that commerce clause.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because at every other meeting that we've ever had for years on this, it's been overwhelming, 99% of the people saying that they hate these things, they want them gone.
Yeah.
But suddenly at this meeting, we have tons of people who support Airbnbs. I don't know where they came from or who told them to be there, but someone did.
They were not informed. They were not informed at all. So it was very surprising, because I have been there or I've listened to them, and people don't want them. people don't want them in their neighborhoods at all. And so I was like, who are these people? And then when they spoke, I was like, you're not who this applies to. Are you sure?
Yeah, there were a lot of people for whom the law wouldn't apply because they live in their homes and they rent out a portion of it, or they rent it out, for game day weekends and go off to the beach or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was puzzling to me. But that also led me to wonder, do we have a number? So we have a number on the number of short-term rentals in the county, which is something like 900 to 1,000.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, I don't
right.
think we have an exact number yet. But
do we have any idea of how many of those are these pure investor properties, as opposed to the people who live in their house and they rent out a portion of it, or they just do it on game day weekends or whatever?
Yeah, we just don't have very good data on that right now.
Yeah,
they're gonna hire a company to manage the database, and then we'll know. But yeah, right now we just don't.
Yeah, which, I certainly wouldn't want to invite a big legal to do on something where the benefit is only, some small fraction of this 900 to 1,000 homes. If only some small handful of those are investor properties and we don't glean very much in terms of housing stock, getting into a big legal fight, I'm all about inviting legal challenges, because we've been preempted. The state government has preempted us on so many things: rent control, wages, so like if we're going to mess up Attorney Drake's week, month, year, or whatever, I would like to do it on something where the benefit is substantial, it's really sizable. And we just don't know, and the debate, you could tell from the debate, the discourse around short-term rentals and doing something about it started, about 2 years ago or so. And it started off as a matter of housing. That housing stock needs to be, available for Athenians or, people who want to live here. But then so quickly the debate turned to 5 Points folks being upset about party houses and noise, which are valid complaints. Like you said, Elle, I wouldn't want to live next to one of these party houses either. But it did start to confuse me as to, like, wait a minute, what is this about? Is this about noise in 5 Points, or is this about the very real chances of opening up a sizable number of properties for people to live in?
Well, I think that's why I really like this issue, because it brings together, leftists and, people who care about housing. That's not just leftists.
Right.
And then with, more established, kind of wealthier people who don't like the noise. Like, we're all on the same side in this one. We don't always get to be on the same side, so I kind of like that.
Right, yeah.
I don't think it necessarily only has to be about adding extra housing. The presence of short-term rentals impacts also the cost of long-term rentals. And it also just kind of changes the environment of a neighborhood as well. And so it does add a bit of instability. So I think there could be multiple reasons why it's worth having this fight either way. But I think a big one is that how poorly it does impact long-term rental costs. Mm-hmm. And then the availability of housing is kind of an important second, I think, and then everything else.
Commissioner Tiffany Taylor made some noise for her district at this meeting, and she got some TAD percentages changed to benefit East Athens. TAD stands for Tax Allocation District, and it's basically just a pot of money set aside for development in certain areas of town. This TAD in particular is split between East Athens and downtown, and both Taylor and Commissioner Evita Thornton were concerned that East Athens wasn't getting their fair share. Thornton proposed a mandatory 30% should go to East Athens, and it could be more than that, but a bare minimum of 30%, which, I mean, I thought that was fair or fair-ish, but Taylor was not having it. So she urged her colleagues to raise that to 70%, leaving only 30% for downtown, and they passed that split unanimously. So this is kind of amazing, I thought.
I was so proud of her. I live on the east side, actually, so that money is sorely needed, and I am not exactly sure how it's going to be allocated, but oh my God, if we could get sidewalks on the east side, it would just at least some would be incredible. But the east side is incredibly underdeveloped, and that initial 70% I saw, I mean, we're all downtown all the time. What exactly could downtown do with that you know the east side couldn't? I truly appreciate, I mean, it's just, I love the east side. I love how much nature is over there, but you can't get to anything. It's not walkable. It is a pedestrian hazard. The bus stops aren't fully functional as well. Those are also incredibly dangerous. They're just on the side of the roads in some places, like close to Lexington. So that she was able to do that, I mean, she's not my commissioner, but I wish she was. Like, that was incredible. Just truly amazing.
For real, yeah. Props to Commissioner Taylor and Commissioner Thornton too. Commissioner Thornton, as I understand it, was there at the beginning when these tax allocation districts were drawn up, and Commissioner Thornton pushed for there to be community benefits involved, which is, as far as my reading tells me, that's a really novel use of this mechanism of the tax allocation district. They were originally drawn up as what are called tax increment financing. I think that's what it's typically called, tax increment financing, where you use there's like a blighted area, like our Newton Bridge tax allocation district, where you have these like big industrial tracts that are underutilized or dormant or whatever. And you use the future prospective property tax money that will come after it gets developed. And you can, usually I think it's you borrow against that future revenue stream in order to build the infrastructure and to spur the development that would bring that property tax into being. That's probably not the best way of explaining it, but it's used. They have been historically used to spur development. This is not that. This is redistribution of wealth, essentially, which I'm in favor of.
This is. So I thought that is what this was. I mean, they're just having like a mandatory split,
right? It's just that. In my understanding, what we in Georgia call it a tax allocation district. They have different names in other states, but it uses tax increment financing, usually it's usually pretty localized, and it's used to spur commercial growth or development of some sort, like commercial development, as opposed to using it to improve parks or using it toward Nellie B. And yeah, but all of this is to say, I'm glad that Commissioner Thornton and Commissioner Taylor have pursued this, because you can tell the way that the Classic Center tax allocation district is drawn. It's sort of gerrymandered to make sure that there's a place that will be the generator of some wealth. And then it stretches all the way back. It winds back to like Nellie B and all back there. And it also avoids some of the areas that have been gentrified in that inner East Athens. So it looks like it was designed in essence, to put it in simple terms, to redistribute some wealth to the people who have long needed and deserved it. Yeah.
I'd say our taxes, right? Because it's coming out of taxes.
Right.
Yeah. So just making sure that, I would say, instead of redistributing wealth, it's like making sure that it's fairly spent across Athens. But I feel like
that might be a better way of saying
yeah.
it. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not taking existing wealth from someone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not being, okay. That's fair. Right. But it is moving money from people who have plenty, i.e.
Right.
the Classic Center Authority.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Well, yeah. To people who sorely needed Nellie B in the block and all that. Yeah.
And I didn't know that about Thornton, so given that I've been criticizing her for other things, I will give her flowers for making sure that there would be a community benefit built into that. That is appreciated.
Yeah, credit where credit's due, for sure.
Absolutely.
The great living wages debate continued at this meeting as well, and I'm sure everyone has been following this. Well, it's actually really deep in the weeds. They're doing a pay study like they do every 5 years to ensure that local government workers are getting paid in accordance with the market. And the study really has nothing to do with living wages. It's about recruitment and retention and making sure we're staying in line with other communities so we're not losing talent. So it's really more about the middle and upper ends of the pay echelons than it is about the pay floor. Commissioner Jesse Houle is the one who has been bringing living wages into this discussion. They want a living wage floor to always be included in these studies to make sure the lowest paid workers keep up with the cost of living. And that's something the market really doesn't care about, right? But Houle does. But some other commissioners want to instead negotiate wages during their yearly budget talks only. And they don't want to bake it into these pay studies. So in practice, if they didn't bake it in, that would mean the commission would always be hesitant, or they might always be hesitant to raise the wage floor, because then it would cause compression for everyone else. And that does cause real problems, I think, in organizations. So I hope all that makes sense.
It does. But one of the things that kept surprising me is like Hull also explained that within the indexing of like these wages with the living wages, that everyone would be brought up, and that there the way that this application would be used would consistently make sure that there isn't this issue of compression. And they explained that several times, and so I was very confused as to why
Patrick?
Yes, Davenport kept coming back to it when it's been explained that there would not be an issue of compression because we're going to make sure that this is indexed. It would be a flexible model that would go with the living wage rather than just bringing up the bottom and not everyone else. And so I have only been present for this discussion for, I think it was brought up 4 times. And I was there for just 4 times and I understood it by the second meeting. So I was so confused as to why he just like kept bringing up this issue of compression and being like, don't leave out the people who are not the bottom, which is such a weird argument to me.
Yeah, and Davenport's been a really big proponent of living wages. He's on the EJC board. Yeah, I didn't really understand that either.
Yeah, he must be hearing a lot from ACC staff who are caught in the middle of the compression. I would assume that he's just getting an earful from people who have been compressed, because otherwise I'm a bit perplexed. There was another exchange between Commissioner Houle and Manager Williams back in maybe this might have been November or December, where they talked about if you remember the magic spreadsheet. Right. Which when I mean, and they both saw eye to eye before things got contentious between Commissioner Houle and the county manager. But they were like, okay, yeah, right. This would be the ideal thing where like you basically plug in the new living wage and that would filter through the entire payroll, and all those sort of intervals that's a lot of math. That's a big, nasty spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's doable. It's just math. And I looked up today, there are 13 states that peg or index their minimum wage to inflation. So it's a thing. And I know the Democrats in Washington have been wanting to do this for a long time, or well, the left Democrats, your Bernie Sanders and folks like that, where that way you don't have to, like you said, go back every budget cycle, which is every year here, and try to advocate for the lowest paid people. It would just be an automatic increase, and then that would ripple through the entire payroll. And now that's costly, but paying people what they deserve costs a lot.
Like the way they've been doing it, so they've raised the wage floor twice in the past 3 years, I believe, and the way they've been doing it is just raising the bottom and causing compression. And so they don't want to do it like that anymore, and so that's why Houle's trying to get this through, because otherwise they just can't keep doing that, but then the other side is saying, no, we can keep doing that. Like, really? So the whole conversation was kind of perplexing.
Yeah. I mean, because it seems like if you leave it to the way that they've been doing it, and you do raise the wages on the bottom again, you're only exacerbating the compression issue. And there are people who will eventually genuinely get upset if a new hire is like making the same or gosh, even more if you keep raising the bottom wage.
And I think that's one of what Davenport is not understanding, that if we index this, it brings everybody up, whereas what we have already been doing is what's causing you to have the conversations that you're having. Like, the compression is caused by us not having these indexed wages. So that was, I don't know, I just hope somebody sits him down and goes, this is, maybe like put it in or demonstrate how some of these other 13 states have done it. Because there are algorithms in software for this. So it's not impossible. It's not at all.
Yeah, and Houle got the commission to agree on this, and an 8-2 vote. Davenport was one of the two people voting no. But they did vote in favor of baking in the living wage floor. But the problem now is that they have to run it by the contractor, who has already not quite been selected, but they've already gone through an RFP process. And why the manager went through this RFP process without, baking in this living wage stuff, that's a whole other discussion maybe, but he did. And so now it's kind of up to the contractor. If they say they can't do this magic spreadsheet easily, then they're going to have to rebid the whole thing, or just not have it in there. And so I don't think the commission really has the appetite to, put the RFP, the request for proposals, back out. So we're good for now, but this may not kind of pass eventually without a lot of people talking about it anyway.
Yeah, political will.
Mm-hmm. For the third straight month, protesters took to City Hall to call for the mayor and commission to issue a ceasefire resolution in Gaza, or a resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza. To date, nearly 30,000 Gazans have been killed by the Israeli military, with some 12,000 of those being children. Nearly 70,000 Gazans have been injured, and literally hundreds of thousands are at risk of starvation and death by treatable, preventable illnesses. And last week in City Hall, ceasefire activists filled the chamber once again to continue their call for a ceasefire. And we're joined by one of those activists today, Elle Lewis. And I guess I'll just start with this. Why is it important for the mayor and commission to pass a resolution on a ceasefire in Gaza?
So one of the reasons why we feel a ceasefire resolution from our commission is meaningful is this is a Democratic blue city, and Georgia went blue recently. So having this ceasefire resolution come out of Athens, like it has come out of Atlanta, I think would amplify the voices of Democrats. It's something like 81% of Democrats support a ceasefire, and actually 65% of Republicans as well. Yeah, and that was in November that survey was published. But what happens is it sends a really strong statement to our senators and our legislators. And like I had said at the commission meeting, it really kind of cuts through that noise that lobbyists are able to make and create this kind of sound barrier. And so having a ceasefire resolution come out of Athens, like Atlanta has done, would really just let Warnock, Ossoff, we also want it to be sent to Biden and Harris. It would let them know that this is a unified front. You might be ignoring your emails. You might be able to turn off your faxes or not answer your phones, but this is not going away. It is a really big issue that people are organizing for. It's a mobilizing event, and it just amplifies our other actions that are happening every day. There's been a protest for Gaza every single day since November, which I think is just, we have not seen sustained protests like this, not even in 2020. So that's why we think a ceasefire resolution is truly important.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of the Democratic leadership really get how big this is. I think you're right on that.
I mean, it is shocking and surprising to see how many Democrats and even progressives like Warnock are stalling people out. There was already a sit-in at Warnock's office. There was a hunger strike in his office, and that happened in November. So it's not as though we are not trying direct action with these people. We have. And so the ceasefire resolution is just another tool that we're deploying. Because surprisingly, Warnock, who has been, I wouldn't necessarily say pro-Palestinian, but he has been for a two-state solution. He has spoken out against the illegal settlements in the West Bank. He's suddenly gone silent on this. And unsurprisingly, he did get a very large donation from APAC. Right before he started kind of scrubbing all Palestinians deserve an equal right to live as any Israeli before that was removed from his website and whatnot.
Yeah, he gave a speech about how he wanted to condition aid to Israel on respecting human rights recently, right? I'm imagining that. And then when it came time for the vote on Bernie Sanders' resolution or whatever it was, he didn't vote for it.
No. And I don't want to say the exact amount, but it was hundreds of thousands of dollars in that APEC donation. And then afterwards, we haven't seen the Warnock that we voted for. So it's pretty disappointing. Pretty disappointing with him as well. But Asaf is someone who was also kind of progressive on this issue. People have written him letters, phone calls. At least Warnock sent an email back to people. Asaf is just not answering. And that has been truly disappointing to see as well. And so I think another ceasefire resolution, especially coming out of Georgia, would be lighting those fires that we need. This is an SOS situation.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, roughly how the AIPAC lobby is able to, alter the discourse in Washington to their ends. I mean, to some degree, they're not all powerful, but they apply their money, as they have been for some decades now. That all makes sense to me. But AIPAC isn't in the Athens-Clarke County City Hall. So what is it that scares? So here's a question for you, Chris. Do we have a sort of a whip count on who would be in favor? And you've probably been watching this more closely than I have. And Elle, you might have a count too. So what are we looking at?
Jesse Hull is in support of a ceasefire resolution. Carol Myers, not only is she in support, but our ceasefire resolution is kind of based on the one that she did write with Jesse Hull. Okay. So what we did, Athens Against Apartheid, was we added a conscientious objection to Athens taxpayers, our money going to fund this genocide. So other than that, ours does not vary much from Carol Myers' version. So we have that. I believe it's Allison Wright and Melissa Link. Those people are soft yeses. Those are people that we're working on. Dexter Fisher and Ovida Thornton are soft yeses as well.
Okay. And Tiffany's a yes as well, right?
Tiffany is a strong yes.
Yeah.
She's a strong yes. And recently signed the Jewish Voice for Peace letter.
Oh, great.
That's awesome.
As a politician as well. Ironically, the same letter that Kelly Gertz encouraged everyone else to sign instead of supporting a ceasefire resolution. And Jesse Hull and Tiffany Taylor have signed it, and he has not. So that was one of the things he got some lashings about at that meeting. But Tiffany Taylor is a strong yes. She was one of the first people to meet with us. And she met with the Students for Justice in Palestine as well, which I thought was incredible. That was one of our first actions at City Hall, and there was a lot more fiery tempers and heated statements, some of them directed at the commission.
Yeah.
And she was still humble enough to sit down with these students and sit down with her constituents to make sure that she heard even beyond the anger. So that was, again, like, she's just a star on this commission. I was very impressed by that. Dexter Fisher is supposedly a soft yes. Okay. But we're just trying to, like, get him to say for sure. John Hamby is not answering anyone. Neither is Culpepper. He just kind of, we've like tried to stop him and talk to him, and he just looks panicked for a moment. So I believe he's probably a no.
We'll call that a no.
Yeah.
I would have called it a no before, but yeah, it's
Davenport is it's probably maybe because he's my commissioner. He is probably the most disappointing no that we've had.
He's a solid no.
I believe so. So funny enough, he agreed to meet with us. He said that he didn't know enough about the situation. He agreed to meet with people, and so he was like he would have to hear from his constituents, and he would in particular like to hear from Jewish residents. So we went back to the group chat, got people from there's an organization called Lefty Jews in Athens, and there is now a very fledgling Jewish Voice for Peace in Athens. And so we reached out to people that we knew in those groups, got everybody ready for this meeting. Gertz sent an email discouraging people from meeting with us. And Davenport accidentally responded to us and was like, I've said that I was going to meet with the Palestinians, but I don't think that I will now that I see this. And so I was like, I don't know that he meant to include us in that email.
Probably not.
Right. But I was just so confused. I am very clearly Afro-Caribbean. I feel like I am pretty phenotypically Black. And he said he wanted to meet with Jewish constituents, and I was like, I have people that would be interested to talking to you. So I'm not sure where he got, I said I was going to meet with the Palestinians, but I probably won't. And so he sent this email, and I hadn't seen it right away. I had texted him to confirm that we'd be meeting at a certain time, and he didn't answer that text. One of the other people in my organization messaged me and was like, did you see what Davenport sent? And that was an hour later. He sent me like, oh, you know what? My schedule has actually changed. I didn't realize that today was Thursday. So my apologies. And that was about an hour before we were supposed to meet. But he hadn't realized that I also had access to the email that he had responded to. Yeah.
I haven't talked with Davenport, but I did talk with Mayor Kelly Gertz, and I mean, I don't know. He told me that he's met with 2 people from your group already, and he's always willing to meet with anyone. That's what he told me.
Yeah. That's pretty surprising to me. He had sent that email discouraging people from, doing anything regarding a ceasefire resolution, and kind of not getting our hopes up since we were wrong-headed in this pursuit. So I am curious as to who he might have met with. I know that he spoke to someone prior to sending that email, but there's also some confusion with people that this is mainly students that's leading this, and that they're confused and unaware of what they're doing. So I am truly unsure if he spoke to someone within the organization. I don't think that he has. I think that he maybe spoke to a student who was concerned. But there is Athens Against Apartheid, and we have tried to clarify who we are to him and to several other commissioners and what our purpose is, which is to get this ceasefire resolution passed locally, but to also be involved in larger ceasefire actions within the state as well. And so there's just lots of inflation between Students for Justice in Palestine and our organization as well.
So do we have any, what's the speculation on why Mayor Gertz is holding this up? I mean, as I understand it now, it is the mayor that is keeping this from the floor, from consideration.
Yes.
Are y'all just as baffled as me with no speculation as to why?
I have a wild theory, just wild speculation. I'll put that out there. I have no concrete proof, but it is his final term as mayor. So
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would seem to me that he might be trying to keep his options open for a more statewide position. And he's probably already got an uphill battle with being from a blue city in Georgia. So he might be trying to just maybe not close himself off to any particular demographic like Christian Zionists or whatnot.
I mean, that could be the case, but people like a courageous candidate who, does the right thing and speaks the truth. So I hope that's not the reason, because I'm not even sure if that even helps him.
Plus, by the time he would be running for whatever higher office, I would suspect by then we will be looking at people who didn't make the courageous decisions during this time and assigning some condemnation. Judgment, right? I mean, this is a time where, standing up or not will be counted. There will come a time in the future when the dust is settled and we will have I think collectively a clearer understanding of what is happening right now. Maybe that comes with an international court of justice ruling that is a genocide underway. Mm-hmm. You even see President Biden the other night, really starting to move rhetorically, at least, much more against the government of Benjamin Netanyahu.
And I mean, what's missing, I think, in this discussion as well is that this has actually cost us, I think now $20 billion in funds to Israel. I'm not sure if that last 17.6. I know that it got shut down, but they're like workshopping it to see if they can get it passed again. So $20 billion in taxpayer dollars has gone to Israel. Joe Biden just announced that he would be cutting $2 trillion out of social spending. People are going to start making the connections when their Social Security runs out, when their SNAP runs out, when they no longer have this the ARPA credit for their rent. When that runs out and they realize those programs were cut so that we could send extra money to a country with a case in The Hague, people are going to start, really truly punishing the Democrats at the polls. And that's going to be a down ballot thing. Like, that's not a small thing at all. Joe Biden is one of the most unpopular presidents that we've had since Bush. He's less popular than Bush as it is. And so I think if a Democrat really wanted to distinguish themselves, they would push away from his stance. Because right now he is far right. He's standing lockstep with Trump on immigration. He's standing lockstep with Trump on Israel. And that is costing him. And it's costing him because people haven't even fully done their taxes yet. And taxes have gone up. People are paying their taxes and they're furious as it stands. When April really kicks off and people see that they're getting $10 back, but we had money for Israeli soldiers to get on TikTok and show that they're getting free eyebrows and nails before they go commit genocide in Gaza, it's not looking good at all. And I'm not sure if people are really understanding the reality that voters are making this connection right now.
And I think Biden has moved rhetorically, and I think that's good. But at the same time, like, they just cut off, aid to UNRWA, the United Nations Food Relief Organization, which, there's a famine there right now. So, like, I don't know how many people are going to die because of that decision. So he's complicit in what's happening. It doesn't really matter what he says, as long as he keeps sending weapons and is not sending food to people who need it. That's a problem.
There's a global weapons shortage. There's a ammunition shortage right now because so much has been sent and used in Gaza.
Yeah, I'm sure probably Ukraine as well, but yeah. I wish we had some good news at this point.